Namaste, good evening, and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our Upanishad class. Om Namo Brahma Dibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Vamsharshibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Om Shanti 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 Narayanam Padmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim cha Tatputra Parasharam cha Vyasam Sukham Gaudapadam Mohantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padmapadam cha Hastamalakan cha Shishyam Tantrotakam Vartikakara Manyanasmadgurun Santatamanatosmi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We salute the lineage of teachers, beginning with God, the divine being itself, who gave the knowledge of the infinite truth to Brahma, the creator, who in turn gave it to the ancient sages who passed it down in a continuous succession, age from age to age, down to the present day. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that infinite being protect us. May it sustain us. May we grow strength together. May our study be vigorous and illuminating. May there be no ill will amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So in our study of the Katha Upanishad, last time we came to the end of chapter 1. And let me just say to avoid confusion for those of you who may have different versions of the Katha Upanishad, that there are two ways of numbering the chapters in the Upanishad. In one way, there are two chapters, the first chapter and the second chapter, and each chapter has 3 parts. Or another way to say it would be there are 2 parts, and each part has 3 chapters. The way that I am using here, another traditional way of numbering the Upanishad is that there are just 6 chapters. So whether it's 2 parts, 3 chapters each, or just 6 chapters. So I'm dispensing with the idea of a part divided into chapters, just to taking the 6 chapters, because the parts don't really have any significance to the Upanishad. It's not that the first part deals with something and the second part deals with another. It was just a way of numbering the text and dividing the text. So we came last time to the end of chapter 1. And so just to recapitulate, what we've studied so far is the story, the background. Just as when we study the Gita, the first chapter and the first 10 verses of the second chapter are just part of the story, the background, which leads to Sri Krishna's teaching, which begins really in verse 11 of chapter 2. So here there is a story which is taken in chapter 1. And so let me just retell the story. Those of you who have been to the previous classes know it well, but it won't hurt to review. So there was a boy named Nachiketas, whose father was performing the Vishwajit sacrifice, a particular Vedic rite in which one was to give up all of one's wealth, to give it to Brahmins and to the poor, and to sacrifice to the gods as well. And so one was to give away all of one's wealth. And through that sacrifice, it was considered that one would gain the heavenly world after death. that after one's death, one would go to the realm of the gods, where one would live in great pleasure for long ages. And so that was the aim of the sacrifice. But Nachiketa is watching as his father is performing the sacrifice and sees that he's only giving away his old and useless cows. That is, he's being hypocritical. He's only giving away that which is of no use to anybody anyway. And so it says that the Shraddha Vivesha, faith entered into the boy. And so seeing that his father is committing a great error, and a very harmful error to his father, for this hypocrisy in the midst of a sacred rite, he asks his father, to whom will you give me? That is, considering himself, I belong to my father, I'm part of my father's wealth. The son certainly is a major part of a man's wealth. And so, O Father, who are you going to give me? If you're giving away all of your wealth, you must give me. So again, that, as I've said in other classes, the amazing thing about that is that the boy was ready to sacrifice himself, to put himself in his father's hands to give away as a gift, so that his father's sacrifice would be fulfilled, so that he wouldn't incur the sin of having cheated the gods and others who were the recipients of his gifts. And his father's annoyed by the statement of his son, so he ignores him. Nachiketa asks a second time. The father ignores him. He asks a third time, and his father, in anger, says, I give you to death. And as I've said in previous classes, that's the equivalent of saying, you go to hell. If we tell someone to go to hell, we don't really mean it literally. It's a way of expressing annoyance. And so his father, in annoyance, just says, I give you to death. Meaning, get out of here, leave me alone, don't be impertinent, don't interrupt. But Nachiketa, again, because faith had entered into him, he's determined that he's going to save his father from the obvious evil that is going to come to him for having cheated in this great and important sacrifice. The more important the undertaking, the greater the fruits of the undertaking, the greater is the travesty of hypocrisy in the midst of it. And so again, the Vishwajit sacrifice, in which one gives away everything in order to attain to a long life in heavenly worlds of great pleasure, to cheat in that is a great sin. So again, Nachiketa tells his father, look at what the elders have done, those who have gone before us, how noble were their lives, how careful they were in what they did and what they said, how truthful they were. Look at the elders. And then look at the grain, how the grain grows, it goes to seed, it falls to the earth and dies. And then new grain comes, goes to seed, falls to the earth and dies. Meaning that everything in life is transitory. You also, in time, like the grain, you will die and then be reborn. And so in this transitory world, what is the use of this hypocrisy? What will you gain by this type of hypocrisy? When you're going to lose everything with death anyway, why not fulfill your sacrificial commitment? And but then Nachiketa, because his father told him to go to death, even though he undoubtedly didn't mean it literally, Nachiketa took him at his word and went to the house of death. On the other side of life, he went to the house of death. Yama, the god of death, who goes by many other names. He's considered to be the embodiment of dharma, of righteousness. And he's considered a high, not God like Ishvara that we worship and pray to, but one of the higher minor gods, because he rules human destiny. And so Yama was out when Nachiketa came to his house. And so for 3 days. So when Yama comes back to his house, Yama's wife says, look, we've had a guest here for 3 days. He's been without food and water. We've ignored him. But a guest enters into the house, a respected guest enters into the house of a householder like a great fire. That is, the fire can do many good things for you, but if you don't attend to it properly, it can burn the house down. And so a guest coming into the house is like a fire, which if you treat the guest properly, great good will come to you. But if you ignore it, then it can destroy everything that you have. And so then the Yama apologizes to Nachiketa and tells him that for the 3 nights that you stayed here unattended by me because of my absence, I offer you 3 boons. So he asks forgiveness of Nachiketa and offers him 3 boons, one for each night that he was ignored. And then Nachiketa, as we remember, he first asked that his father should be reconciled, and that when he returns from death, that his father's anger should be mollified, and that he should recognize and take back Nachiketa, not think that he's come from the realm of death, it must be a ghost, I won't have anything to do with him, I won't even look at him, because it's a ghost coming from death. No, he should recognize me and take me back as his son, and things should be as they were before. So Yama says, done, that I will do. And then Nachiketa says that I've heard that there is a realm after death where people go and enjoy a great pleasure, and that there are sacrifices, ritual sacrifices, which lead to that world of unending enjoyment. And of course, in Vedanta, it's considered that it's not really unending, but it seems unending because it lasts so long. And so Yama teaches him a sacrifice and tells him, I named this sacrifice after you, the Nachiketa sacrifice, Nachiketa sacrifice. Henceforward, people will know it by your name as your sacrifice. And through its performance, you can attain to that heavenly realm. And then Nachiketa asks for the 3rd boon. He asks, some people say that after one dies, that the person continues. Others say that with death, everything comes to an end. So taught by you, I want to know the secret of death. And then Yama tells him that this is extremely difficult. Even the gods were confused about this. So please don't press me about this, the secret of death. You can have long life. You can have sons and grandsons who themselves live for 100 years. You can have all of the wealth in the world. The whole earth I can give to you. The whole earth I can give to you as yours. You will have dominion over the whole earth. Anything that you want. These celestial damsels, which are not to be attained by men, mortal men. Beautiful musical instruments for your entertainment, these celestial chariots that you can ride in. All of this will be yours, but don't press me on the matter of death. So Nachiketa says, no, all of these things only wear out the senses. They exhaust the senses and they exhaust our vitality. What's the use of those? I, having seen you, then wealth is easy to attain for one who has come to you, but that I don't care for. I'm only going to live as long as you allow me to live anyway. You are Yama, the Lord of Death, and so as long as you will, I will stay alive, but not any longer than that. And so I don't care about long life. Even the longest life is short when it ends in death. And so one by one, Nachiketa refuses all of the temptations that Yama has given him. And so the last verse of the chapter where we ended last time, I'll read that again and then we'll go forward. Yasmin idam vichikitsanti mrityo yat sambaraye mahati bruhinastat yo yambaro gudhamanu pravishto nanyam tasman nachiketa vrinite. So yasmin idam vichikitsanti mrityo, O death, in this matter that people have their doubts. Even the gods have their doubts. That is, in this matter of what happens after death. Yat sambaraye mahati bruhinastat. Tell us about that sambaraye, that supreme life, which sambaraye mahati, mahat sambaraya, that great life which comes after death. Tell us about that which comes after death. Yoyam varo godham anupravishto. That boon which is most secret. Secret because it's very difficult to understand and very difficult to find anyone who can give a conclusive answer. So that secret which is deeply hidden, nanyam tasman nachiketa vrinite. Other than that, Nachiketa doesn't want anything. So the commentators, like Shankaracharya, say that this last line is spoken by the narrator of the Upanishad. So in the beginning of the Katha Upanishad, it begins with the narration, Ushan havai na vajasravasaha sarvaveda sandado. So there was a boy named Nachiketa whose father was giving all of his wealth away in sacrifice. That's the narrator speaking. After that, then we come to Nachiketa speaking and Death speaking, their dialogue. But it says that this last line, Nachiketa does not choose any boon other than that incomprehensible one, that one which is entered into a deep secret, meaning it's incomprehensible, difficult to get teaching on that. So again, Death tried everything, Yama tried everything to tempt Nachiketa away from asking about death, telling him that this is very difficult to understand. Even the gods are confused about this. So don't press me on this. Nachiketa refuses all of the gifts of Yama and tells him that where else will I find a speaker like you? One who is the controller of human destiny. If anyone knows about the secret of death, it is you, O Death. And so where I'll not get another teacher like you, so I won't accept any other boon. This is my boon. And so then we begin the second chapter, wherein the teachings of the Upanishad begin. But of course, this first chapter is full of instruction as well. The first chapter, the story of Nachiketa, about his the faith that entered into him, what that faith led him to do, the boldness of the boy, and the way he held on to the truth and was even willing to sacrifice himself to death for the sake of his father. So that his father's honor could be and good destiny could be preserved. And then Nachiketa's desire that his father's anger should be appeased. That is, he was still concerned about the welfare of his father after he went to Yama. And then his ignoring of all of the pleasures which Yama offered to him. And again, as I said last time, we have to remember that Yama had the power to give all of these things to Nachiketa. It wasn't like somebody coming to me and saying that, oh, I'll give you $1 million if you'll do such and such. No way that I could ever fulfill that, so it's empty words. But with Yama, they weren't empty words. Yama is the controller of human destiny, and so he could give him anything that the human mind and human heart could desire. The best things, and even things beyond our imagination, could be given by Yama. Actually given to Yama just by his wish, and still Nachiketa refuses it all. And so the first chapter is full of teaching, but through the medium of a story. But now we come to where Yama begins to answer this question of Nachiketa, the question about what comes after death. So he begins the first verse of the second chapter. Anyat shreyonyadutaiva preyaste ubhe nanarthe purushagam sinitaha tayo shreya adadanasya sadhu bhavati hiyatirthadya upreyo vrinite. So this says, Anyat shreyo anyadutaiva preyaha. So shreyas, the good, is one thing. Anya dutaiva uta eva preyaha. And the pleasant is quite another. So the good is one thing, the pleasant is another. Te ube nanarte purusham sinitaha. Both of them both of them bind a person. Both of them bind a person because they have different ends. These two, the good and the pleasant, they lead to different ends. They have different purposes, but both of them bind a person. Tayo shreya adadanasya sadhu bhavati. But the one who chooses the good, to such a one good comes. Hiyaterthadya upreyo vrinite. But the one who chooses the pleasant misses the aim of life. So the running translation here is, one thing is the good, and quite different indeed is the pleasant. Having been of different purposes, they both bind the Purusha, or having been of different ends, different goals, they both bind the person. Good befalls him who follows the good, but he loses the goal who chooses the pleasant. And so this is the beginning of the teaching. And why does he begin in this way? Because Nachiketa has just chosen the good. He's not chosen the pleasant. He could have chosen long life. He could have chosen celestial damsels. He could have chosen celestial chariots to ride around in. He could have been the ruler of the whole earth, greater than the greatest emperor. He could have lived. Yama offered to let him live as many years as he wanted to live. You'll live as long as you want to live. You'll only die when you're ready to die, when you decide to die. So all of that he could have had. So he was presented with the pleasant and was told, don't ask me about this, the knowledge of death. But Nachiketa knew that that was the good. But here it says that the good and the pleasant, they're quite different. And yes, that we'll come back to in a moment. But they both bind a person. Both the Shreyas and the Preyas, both the good and the pleasant bind a person. So Swami Vivekananda used to say that the golden chain binds as does the iron chain. Both are chains. One may look beautiful, and we may think that it enhances our appearance, but it's still a chain. And so both bind us. But it's through choosing the good that we evolve, that we go upward, until we're ready to give up both. But one first has to seek that which is sattvika, that which is pure, that which is tranquil, that which is moral, that which is beneficial, that which is pure, etc. That is the sattvika of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And so we have to choose that. Sattva itself binds us. Sattva is the golden chain that binds us. But rajas and tamas bind us even more permanently, or even more strongly, to worldly existence. So it's through attaining to sattva that the mind becomes transparent enough that we can see the truth. And then we can give up even sattva and become triguna atita, beyond transcending the three gunas, even sattva. So yes, the good and the pleasant both bind us, but the good we have to seek now. We're already bound, but we have to seek the good in order to purify the heart and the mind. And then eventually we'll be able to go beyond both. So one thing is the good, and quite different indeed is the pleasant, having different ends in view. And so the good means that which leads to our higher good. So the good means that which leads to our higher good, to our higher evolution. And it only does that if it's good for us and also doesn't harm other people. So the good means that which is spiritually beneficial to us, morally beneficial to us, and to other people. And the pleasant means that which pleases our senses, that which we enjoy. And so when these two confront us, so it's not always that in every situation that there's always a choice between the good and the pleasant. Sometimes if someone is serving you dinner and they're serving you good food, then you take the good food and you eat it and you enjoy it. There's not a question of, well, no, I won't take the good food because I only want to take the good. Well, in that case, there's not a choice between good and pleasant. But many times we find that there's a choice between, or we're presented with a choice where one option is for the good and the other option is for our pleasure. And to take a very ordinary situation, which all of us have experienced when we were school kids. We're facing an exam, and yet friends that we're very close to, they may not be having an exam on the same day that we are, and so they're having a party the night before. And we really want to go to the party because all of our friends will be there. We'll be able to relax. We'll be able to have fun, talk into the night and play music and everything. Everything will be great, have good food and companionship. But I have an exam in the morning. And if I want to do well in school, I have to pay attention to my studies. And so here I've got a choice between the pleasant and the good. And the wise person chooses the good. So yes, both are in a sense bondages, because to do the good, I have to discipline myself. I have to not do what I want to do, and I have to do my studies. I have to get enough sleep before the exam. I have to go to school on time and all of that. So it takes work. The good takes work, and so in that sense, also it's a bondage, because something you have to do in order to get the good. The pleasant, you just go and you enjoy yourself and have a good time. You just let go and relax. And so there are many times like that, and bigger choices also, where we're presented with the good on one hand and the pleasant on the other hand. And so we have to learn to choose the good. If we choose the good, we're going in the direction of the aim of human life, which is the knowledge of truth, which is enlightenment, which is awakening to the spiritual truth, which is transcendence. We're moving towards that. If we choose the pleasant, then it's like going to sleep. I'm just going to relax into what feels good, and I don't get any benefit out of it. And so again, this is a situation we're presented with every day. So the second verse, this continues the idea. The second verse is Shreyascha preyascha manushyametastav sambaritya vivinakti dhiraha shreyo hi dhiro bhipreyaso vrinite preyo mando yogakshemad vrinite. So Shreyascha preyascha manushyam etaha. Both the good and the pleasant approach a person. They both come to us. That is, in the experiences of life, in the course of life, both the good and the pleasant come to us. We meet them every day. They're being offered to us in various ways every day. To samparitya vivinakti dhiraha. The wise person, having examined them thoroughly, samparitya vivinakti, vivinakti. Discriminates. So the wise person, seeing the good and the pleasant, examines them thoroughly. Samparitya, having examined them thoroughly, is the meaning, but the literal meaning is samparitya. Itya meaning having gone, pari, having gone all around, and samparitya, having gone all around very thoroughly. So having examined the good and the pleasant thoroughly, to see their nature and see what they lead to, what are the consequences of choosing one over the other. Thus, having looked at the issue very carefully, the wise one discriminates. Shreyo hi dhiro bhipreyaso vrinite. So the dhira, the wise person, chooses the good over the pleasant. So the wise person, having examined thoroughly both the good and the pleasant, when this decision comes that you choose this or this, having examined them thoroughly, chooses the good over the pleasant. Preyo mando yogakshemad vrinite. But the manda, the lower person, the person of poor understanding, chooses the pleasant for the sake of protecting what he has and acquiring more, acquisition and preservation of one's possessions and one's pleasures. So Yogakshema, that's a technical term which comes in the Bhagavad Gita in a famous verse and in other places here in the Katha Upanishad also. So yoga means acquiring here means acquiring things, and kshema means protecting what you already have. So the person of poor understanding chooses the pleasant in order to increase their wealth, their pleasure, their enjoyment, and to protect what they already have. So the running translation goes, both the good and the pleasant approach one. The wise person discriminates between the two, having examined them well. Yea, the wise man prefers the good to the pleasant, but the fool chooses the pleasant through avarice and attachment. Yogakshema, he translates as avarice and attachment. That is, avarice to have more things, and attachment, that is, to protect the things that one already has. But of course, the root meaning is as I explained. So yes, as we live our lives, we're constantly being offered choices. In fact, life in one way, I've often said in classes on other topics that life from one perspective can be seen as problem solving. But in this context, we can also see that life can be seen as a series of choices. That is, life is constantly presenting choices to us where we have to discriminate between which option to take. And sometimes, clearly, we just don't know. But sometimes, if we can see that this is the good option, but this is the pleasant, here I can just relax and enjoy. And I don't have to bother about anything. That's the pleasant. Here I may have to work some, I may have to strive, I may have to discipline myself and so forth. But this one will lead me to a good end. Whereas this is like going to sleep and waking up and finding that the train that I was waiting for has already left the station. The fool chooses the pleasant just because of its attractiveness. The wise person chooses the good because the wise person knows that that will lead to a higher good. So it's important for us to know that when the scriptures tell us something like this, and they are telling us that the difference between the good and the pleasant, that it's not that the scriptures are pouring cold water on pleasure, because some austere sadhu in ancient times thought that it was good to pour cold water on everybody who's having fun, make everybody miserable like me. I've given up everything and I'm miserable, so I'm going to make everybody else miserable and tell them to give up the pleasant. No, it's not like that. The reason why the Upanishad tells us about this is because it's for our own good. It's our own good and our own welfare. It's not that it makes God happy, or it makes the religious teachers happy, or it makes the scriptures happy to see people make themselves miserable in the name of religion. No, it's not a question of making ourselves miserable. It's a question of making ourselves better. The quality of our mind improves. The quality of our being improves. The quality of our heart improves. We feel greater joy in life. We find that we are able to face the difficulties of life much more easily. We're able to remain steady in the midst of the difficulties of life. So the choice is given to us, and we're told what choice to make, not because it does somebody else good, but because it does us good. So if I learn to choose the good, that which is better, for instance, if there's someone who needs my help, and help that I can give. Sometimes somebody wants help from us that we can't give, and sometimes they want something from us that we shouldn't give. But say in a situation where somebody wants my help, and it's a help that I can give, and it's a good thing, and I also have a chance to go to the beach for the day with friends and to just have a relaxing time on the beach. Then I'm faced with, again, there's nothing wrong with going to the beach. There's nothing wrong with going to the beach with good friends. There's nothing wrong with having a good time. But in this situation, I'm offered that where I'm not necessary. It's not necessary that I go to the beach. It's only just for diversion and for relaxation. Again, in itself, nothing wrong. But on the other hand, there's someone who needs my help. And so I should come to the point where when I'm presented with those two, there's no question. Of course, I'm going to go and give help where I can. There's not even a question to it. So we have to become used to choosing the good so that there's not even a question. When we go and help the person, we're not thinking all of the time about, oh God, I wish I hadn't agreed to this. I should be out on the beach, relaxing with my friends with no care in the world, just lying in the sun, sunbathing and swimming in the ocean and having a good time. I should have done that. No, we should learn that the good brings good in its trail, and go and making our decisions just based on what is pleasant, that leads us to a bad end. So again, not that going to the beach is bad, but if I'm choosing that over doing something which is good for me and good for others, then I have missed the purpose of life. So verse 3 continues this thought. Let's see here. Sattvam priyan priyarupagumscha kaman abhidhyayan nachiketo tyasrakshihi naitagum sringham vittamayim avapto yasyam majjanti bahavo manushyaha. So this says, Sattvam priyan priyarupanscha kaman abhidhyayan nachiketo tyasrakshihi. O Nachiketa, you, Abhidhyayan, having carefully examined Priyan Priyarupanscha Kaman, these pleasures which are dear and these which are very desirable. So Priyan means those which are very dear to you, like your own people, your family, and things like that. And Priya Rupans, which are of a beautiful and desirable form, like the damsels, celestial damsels, and chariots and musical instruments that were offered to Nachiketa. So Putra Putrang, he was offered sons and grandsons that would live for 100 years. So that's offering him things that are very dear. What could be more dear than one's child or one's grandchildren? So he's offered that. And Priya Rupanscha, he's offered again celestial damsels, celestial chariots, beautiful musical instruments, and other things, authority over the whole earth. And so you have examined both the dear and the beautiful, and you've given them up. Atyasrakshi. You have rejected all of those things, the things that would be dear to a person, and the things which are of beautiful and enticing form. Netam srinkam vittamayim avapto. And you didn't take this beautiful course of great wealth, made of great wealth, vittamayim. So the two ways of interpreting this. One is that all of this wealth that I offered to you, the various types of wealth that I offered to you, and all of it, not just you could have this or this. I'm offering you this and everything. All of this great wealth you have rejected also. You have not received these things. The other way is Srinkam was used in the first chapter where Yama tells Nachiketa after his second boon that I teach you this Nachiketa fire through which you will attain to heavenly life. And also let me give you, because I'm pleased with you, let me name the fire after you, another boon, and let me give you this Srinkam, Aneka Rupam, this variegated, beautiful necklace, which, as I explained when we did that verse in the first chapter, it can mean a necklace, srinkam, or it can mean a course. That is, Shankaracharya interprets it either as a priceless bejeweled necklace or as the course of sacrifices through which great wealth can be attained and heavenly life can be attained and all of that. So here he uses the same term, and that you were not tempted even by this necklace made of great wealth, or this course of, or these things which together are like a necklace of great wealth, like all of these offerings that I made to you. You didn't receive any of that. Yasyam majjanti bahavo manusyaha. These things which most people delight in. So I offered you these things that most people delight in. If they were offered these things, people would go crazy with joy. Like the people we hear about when they hear that they have won the lottery, they have a heart attack and die they're so excited from getting the news that they won the lottery. And so these are the things that people delight in. If I offered these to others, they would have, without second thought, they would have jumped at the chance to have these delightful things. But you haven't received them. So again, the running translation, so you, O Nachiketas, have renounced all those pleasurable objects of love and those that are pleasurable in appearance, having pondered over them as well, abhidhyayan. You have not gone into this path of wealth in which many beings perish. Yasyam majjanti, in which they sink and perish, in which many people perish or sink. So then verse 4 continues the idea. And it says, Duramete viparite vishuchi avidyaya cha vidyeti jnata vidyabhipsinam nachiketa sammanye natva kama bahavo lolupanta. So this says, Duramete viparite vishuchi. These two, the good and the pleasant, Duram, the Duram Viparite, they are far apart, separated far apart, Viparite, Vishuchi, and they lead to different ends. They lead towards different directions. So the good and the pleasant, they're not at all the same. They're not at all the same. They're widely separated. They're far apart in their nature, and they lead to very different ends. Avidyaya cha vidyeti jnata. These things which are known to be the cause of ignorance and knowledge. So the preyas, the pleasant, that leads to ignorance, and shreyas leads to knowledge. And so these two, which are far apart and lead to different ends, known as knowledge and ignorance. Good leading to knowledge, the pleasant leading to ignorance. Vidya bhipsinam nachiketa sammanye. I consider you, O Nachiketa, vidya bhipsinam, one who desires knowledge, that is, in the sense of wisdom. I consider you one who desires wisdom. Natva kama bahavo lolupanta. You were not shaken by many great desires, that is, by objects of desires, those things which I offered to you. They didn't rouse desires in you which shook you and made you swerve from the path of righteousness. You were so steady because Shraddha Vivesha, faith had entered into you. You were filled with faith, and you examined the things that were offered and you rejected them. So again, the translation is wide apart and leading to different ends are these two, ignorance and what is known as knowledge. I consider Nachiketas an aspirant of knowledge because much prospect of pleasure did not shake him. And so here we see that Yama all along knew the secret of death. And of course, Nachiketas knew that he knew the secret of death because he's death himself. So who else would know better than Yama what happens after a person dies? And so Yama did, of course, know that, but he didn't want to give it to Nachiketas easily, because it's only when the disciple is prepared that this knowledge has its full fruit. Most people are not really interested. Most people are easily swayed by the temptation of other things. And spiritual life is the first thing that many people give up. And so Yama wanted to test Nachiketa to make sure that he was an aspirant of a high caliber, that he was qualified for this knowledge which he had the ability to give. And so he tried everything to get out of teaching this knowledge to Nachiketas, but Nachiketas wouldn't give up. And so Yama is highly pleased. So again, in the first chapter, Yama seemed genuinely distraught by the question of Nachiketas, and tells him all of these reasons why you shouldn't be asking this. There's no need for it. I'll give you all of these other things which people want, which are so pleasant, which people can't even imagine the types of pleasures which I will grant to you, and as much life as you want. So he seemed genuinely distraught at Nachiketas' insistence on knowing the secret of death. But now we see that that was just to test him, to make sure that he was worthy of this knowledge. And then we come to a very famous verse in the Upanishad, one which is often quoted and often referred to, verse 5 in chapter 2. So verse 5 says, Avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayam dhira panditam manyamanaha dandram yamana pariyanti mudha andhenaiva niyamana yathandhaha. So this is avidyayam antare vartamanaha. So living in the midst of ignorance, living in the midst of ignorance, swayam dhira panditam manyamanaha, but thinking themselves to be wise and intelligent. So the people who wandering around in the midst of dense ignorance, but thinking themselves wise and intelligent, dandramyamanaha paryanti murhaha. Fools stagger to and fro, wandering about. Andhenaiva niyamana yathandha, like the blind being led by the blind. So the running translation here has, fools dwelling in the very midst of ignorance, the darkness of ignorance, yet vainly fancying themselves to be wise and learned, go round and round, staggering to and fro, like blind men led by the blind. And so, yes, that is a great truth, that there are many people in life who want to give us advice. In fact, everybody wants to give people advice. We don't like so much getting advice from other people, but we love to give advice to people. Whether it's giving them medical advice or health exercise advice or shopping advice or behavior advice or advancement in career advice or homely wisdom advice, whatever it is. We love to advise other people. We're not so fond of getting advised. And so there are many people who offer to enlighten us about the meaning of life. But they're like the blind leading the blind. They don't know what the purpose of life is. They don't know what the end of life is. They don't know what the nature of life is. They don't know what the path within life is. And so they're just wandering around blind, unaware of the truth, unaware of spiritual values, unaware of everything, and yet they're ready to advise others. So, oh, you should do it like this, you should live like this, don't bother with religion and all of these things. That why would you bother your head about all of that? Nobody knows what God is, and if God exists or what, this world is enough. Why do you have to bother about all of that stuff? People who spend too much time thinking about religion, they go crazy, as we all know. So don't do that. Don't ruin your head, your mind, thinking about all of these religious things. Don't practice too much meditation because that will damage your brain. Just have a good time. That's what life is all about. Life is just about having a good time, relaxing, and just somehow get through with as little problems as you can. So many people are ready to advise us in all sorts of ways, which has no value at best and damaging properties at the worst. And so the fools dwelling in the very midst of ignorance themselves, yet vainly fancying themselves to be wise and learned, go round and round, staggering to and fro, like blind men led by the blind. So let me do, let's see, one more verse for tonight, and then if there are any questions, I will take those. So verse 6 says, "Na sambaraya pratibhati balam pramadyantam vittamohena mudham ayam loko nasti para iti mani punah punarvashamapadyate me." So this says, "Nasambaraya pratibhati balam." The path to the other world, doesn't reveal itself to the childish, that is, to the foolish. The path to the higher life after this life doesn't reveal itself to the childish. Pramadyantam vittamohena murham, the childish fool who is careless. That is, careless about their life, careless about values, careless about what is true, careless about what is good as opposed to what is pleasant. Vittamohena mudham, and who are deluded by the delusion of wealth. That is, who are not that the wealth is a delusion, but the delusive power of wealth. So those who are deluded by the deluding power of wealth. Fools who think that because I'm wealthy, I'm a big person, and everybody should respect me, and the world's doors should be open to me because I'm a person of substance and I'm a person of privilege. So the Sri Ramakrishna would use the example of the frog who has a rupee in his mouth and thinks that there's nobody bigger in the whole world than me because I've got a rupee in my mouth. That is the fools who are deluded by the power of wealth. So the path to the higher life after death doesn't shine to the childish, those who are careless and who are deluded by the power of wealth. Ayam loko nasti para iti mani. To the person who thinks that this world exists, but the other world doesn't exist. Punah punarvashamapadyate me. Such people come again and again under my sway. So these people who are childish, who are fooled by the power of wealth, who are careless about what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, who think that this world is all that exists. The other world doesn't exist. There's nothing after death. Such people come again and again under my sway. That is, they live their life out in delusion. They die. They're subject to yama, and they're sent to their destiny. They come back. They're born again here. They lead out their life in blindness. They come to the end. They're taken away by yama, sent somewhere else. They come back, born again, lead their life like that. So again and again, they come under my sway. So the translation here is, to the careless child, befooled by the delusion of wealth, the path of the hereafter never appears. This is the only world, and there is no other, he thinks, and thus falls into my control again and again. So a very beautiful verse, and also true to experience. That is the majority of people in the world. a majority even of people who are nominally religious, people who go to temples, people who go to churches, people who go to synagogues. The majority of them fall into this category. They go, as some people say famously, they're something that I've heard from childhood, people who go and who say they go to church or synagogue or temple as an insurance policy, just in case there is something after death. They want to be sure that they covered all their bases so that they're not left behind when they die, but they don't really believe it. It's just an insurance policy. Just in case this religious silliness is true, I'll go to church or temple or synagogue just to so that that base is covered. But I don't really, not going to waste time on it. I'm not going to allow it to affect the pleasurable tenor of my life, seeking pleasure and everything. But I'll do it just as an insurance policy. So the majority of people, even religious people, and even those who, because they're religious, they even believe that there is a hereafter, but they don't really think about it. They don't really pay attention to it. They don't really, it really doesn't enter into their major decisions in life. And so to the careless child, befooled by the delusion of wealth, the path of the hereafter never appears. They don't even think of it as a path. And again, the people who are not religious, that's obvious of them, but even people who are religious, I go to church, I go to temple, I go to synagogue, I go to the mosque, do my prayers, do my little rituals, because it makes me feel good to have done something in that line, but I'm not going to allow it to affect my life too much. Don't get too religious, don't get bound up in this. And so the religion as a path to a higher life, that doesn't appear. Religion to most people is just something, a means to try to make this life a little better, make this life a little more tolerable. They don't want anything beyond this life. And so religion seems to offer, you pray to God and God gives you some benefit. God is gracious if you pray to God. And so you get through God's help, you can get the good things of life which you couldn't get on your own. And so religion becomes a means to get the pleasant things of life. So that for most people is religious life. So we'll continue from here next time. We'll begin on verse 7 of chapter 1. So now I'll give announcements, and if there are any questions, I will take those after the announcements. So for announcements, on Thursday, we will have the class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna at the usual time, 11 o'clock in the morning. Sunday, there will be no service here, no live stream service, no in-person service, because we are having an open house at the new retreat in Trinity, Texas. And over 40 people have signed up so far. Some people have reported that they had trouble signing up on Eventbrite. So if you had trouble signing up on Eventbrite, let me know just by a call or an email or a text. Let me know that you want to go, but you couldn't sign up on Eventbrite, so that we have some sort of count of how many people to expect. But right now we're expecting close to 50 people to come. And we've arranged for a good quality restroom, portable restroom that will have a place to wash your hands and all of that, better quality than the usual, like the construction site porta potty. This is supposed to be a nice one. So that we will have, because the retreat property at present has no restroom facilities. And so we'll provide lunch for all of you. If you have a special diet, then you can bring your own food, of course. But we will have, and the food that we'll have will be pizzas and some salad and things like that. So we'll provide lunch for everybody. And if you want to bring a lawn chair for comfortable sitting, like a folding lawn chair or something, you can bring that with you. We will have some folding chairs from here, but you know the chairs that we have here, which are serviceable, but not made for great comfort. So if you want to bring lawn chairs, feel free to do that. And so we look forward to seeing you there. Hope as many of you as possible can come, but please do let us know if you're coming. And then after that, next week, when we have the Upanishad class at 7:30 and then the gospel class and the following Sunday lecture, after the 13th, we will have in-person classes and lectures. So you're welcome to come here if you have been vaccinated. We ask that only people who have been fully vaccinated come. And while you're here, at least for now, we ask that you wear a mask inside the auditorium, inside the chapel. And with time, then we'll relax that requirement also. But for now, you're welcome to come. But we do ask that you come if you're vaccinated and that you wear a mask. Okay. Yes. So, yes. So the question from Suren is that doing good is for those who believe in the afterlife, but there are many people who don't believe in religion, don't believe in the afterlife, but they are very good. They do good things and so forth. So yes, it's not that one has to believe in an afterlife to do good. There are people who have been, it's part of their nature. It's part of their training as children, part of the way they grew up. They believed in doing good and so forth. And there is some inner reward just for doing good and being good. In fact, the Buddha said, do good not for any ulterior motive, not even for going to heaven. Do good just because it's good to do good. That is, by doing good, you feel some inner satisfaction. And that's not bad. People say that, well, if you feel inner satisfaction, then it's selfish. Well, no. Everything that we do right now, until we've transcended self, everything is selfish. Even if I sacrifice my life for others, that also is selfish in a sense. Because everything that a person who has a sense of individual identity does is based on that sense of individual identity. So that's not a problem, the fact that you feel good doing good to others. But there are many people who don't believe in anything religious but are good. As I've said on other occasions in answer to the similar questions, that yes, that can be because a person has, because of training or experience in life, they find out that they feel better when they do good, and when they do bad, they feel guilt, they feel bad about it. But in the long run, it's the good. The testing of that comes in extreme situations. So first of all, well, let me back up and say, first of all, if a person does good, they don't believe in God or a spirit or anything, and they do good, then that's good. That's praiseworthy. That there's nothing to criticize about that. The goodness is rare enough that a person who is good for any reason or with any context, then that is good. But deep, deep goodness, the type of goodness that you find in a saint, that comes when a person believes in something which is deeper than this life. So people who do good without any belief in anything spiritual, it's rare that such people can actually willingly sacrifice their life for another. If we can, as Swami Vivekananda said, if we can sacrifice our life to give life to another, then we'll be free that instant, because we have somehow realized that there is a larger life than just the life of this body. And so such acts of the highest self-sacrifice, that only comes in people who have somehow intuited or who have actual conscious belief in something which transcends this life. But yes, there are plenty of people who do good just because they feel good doing good and feel bad doing bad. And that itself is good. But it's not enough for becoming spiritual. It may be through that a person, if they become good enough, through that means, then they eventually will begin to feel something, they'll develop a sensitivity to spirituality. and then they may become spiritual. That's what Sri Ramakrishna had hoped for Vidyasagar, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who was a great philanthropist, but he didn't pay attention to religion. Sri Ramakrishna told him that lying within you is a great treasure. All you need to do is to turn your mind towards that, and it will be unlocked, because you've become very unselfish through your charity. But your charity can only take you so far. And so that type of goodness, that kind of unselfishness relative selfishness can only carry us so far. So, good and pleasant. Is it like remove one thorn by using another thorn? Yes, yes. We use the sattvic to remove that. Even before that, we use rajas to remove tamas, that is passionate activity, to remove laziness, and then we use sattva to remove rajas. That is, we use tranquility, calmness, goodness to remove the passionate activity. But then we have to transcend even that. So it's like removing one thorn with another and throwing both away. One is a useful thorn, the other is a thorn that's embedded in our flesh causing trouble. What about the case when the choice is not so clear, which is good and which is pleasant? How do we decide what to choose? Well, there's no magic about that. If there's really no question of what is good or pleasant between the two choices, say if both choices are good, then it doesn't matter much. And if both choices are pleasant, it doesn't matter much. It only matters where one is good and the other is pleasant. And even there, sometimes it may be difficult to determine, but that we can only tell. There's not an answer that can be given in the abstract. That only comes with a specific situation. So it just comes through experience. And then please record and publish on the YouTube or something like that, the retreat site visit for those of us who cannot attend in person. Okay. Well, we won't be able to set that up for this weekend. That's a good idea. But we don't even have much electricity there. We don't have much of anything there now. So doing a YouTube presentation of this weekend won't be possible. But we will try to make a YouTube presentation of the property. That could be done, but that would have to be done dedicatedly, not during the midst of the open house. So it's a good idea, but we'll have to save that for after the 13th. So with that, I'll give a closing chant and see you next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That infinite reality is full. This relative universe is full. From out of the fullness of that infinite reality, the fullness of this universe has come, and yet that being remains ever the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe.